was sitting in that meeting and I just kind of had again that knowing where I was like, this is it. I'm done. I really didn't have a plan. I truly did not have a plan, but I knew that eventually I could figure it out. I had a business before, and I'm like, I know I can figure this out and figure out what I want to do and make this work. And I literally just put my notice in and I left that day.
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with a very special guest. Elena, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm really excited to jump into our conversation because I think it's just so cool wherever we're at in the world, we can still be connected. It's really neat.
Yeah, it really is.
So I like to kick off the show and talk about the importance of networking. How are we actually connected?
Yeah, so we connected in a Facebook group. I don't remember the exact one. I believe it was around podcasts, whether you have a podcast or someone wants to be a guest on a podcast. I think you had posted and I responded. Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, you are remembering correctly.
Okay.
It's funny because I'll be honest, I don't remember almost any of the podcast names because I know it's something with podcasting,
Yeah.
but it is really neat because it's an opportunity for people to share their story.
Yeah. And that's what I'm always looking to do, whether it's related to, my work or whatever it is. But if I can share what I'm doing or a part of my story and it helps someone else, I love doing it. So I was looking forward to the episode.
Yeah, you touched on an important point. I think it's so important for people to share their story, and I think a lot of times people feel like their story isn't special or unique enough, and I'm like, it's your story, and that's what makes it so interesting. But also, you never know what people are going through, and your trials and tribulations, and your successes and failures. You never know how that can really help someone else grow, either internally, individually, professionally, however it may be.
Yeah, 100%. And even if it's not directly related, usually people can still learn something from what you're sharing too. So, totally agree.
So let's jump into it. I want to know a little bit more about your origin story. How'd you get to where you are today?
Sure. So, I'll kind of stick on the topic of career because I know that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. So I started off, well, I guess I'll go back a little bit further. When I was younger, I really struggled with confidence. So it showed up in so many different areas of my life, and I really wasn't creating kind of what I wanted to be. And I got to a place where I was really depressed. And at the time, I was going to therapy, and I actually was getting coaching to kind of help myself through kind of a low point that I was going through. And through that process, I really was then able to really change my life and create so much of what I wanted in my health, in my business, with my career, with my relationships, in all areas. And as I was going through that process, I just kind of got that kind of message we get where we're like, I have to bring this to as many people as I possibly can. So after I went through that, I got certified as a coach myself. So I now do health, life, and business coaching. But in addition to that, as I was building up my coaching business, I was creating tons and tons of content online on social media. And this was years ago. And as I was doing that, I was having businesses reach out and say, hey, can you create content for my brand? Originally, it was around, health products, but then eventually it was other things too, because I would create a lot of, talking head videos is what they're called, which is kind of what I'm doing now. And I would have businesses reach out and say, hey, do you do this? Can you help me with this? And over the past couple years, that has really turned into the majority of the business that I do. And I'm doing a little bit less on the coaching side now, just because I truly love that as well. So kind of at a pivot point right now, deciding what I want to do with the coaching, but that's how I get into, where I'm at now. But I think struggling with the confidence early on, as well as the process I went through to kind of help myself with that, helps me do what I do now. Because, sometimes I work with business owners who either are lacking the confidence in their business or their offer or the videos, and I'm able to step in and either help them develop that or, take some of that off their plate. And then, of course, it helps in the coaching side as well.
I think it's so important. You touch on that confidence and how to build that confidence and through what you do, but also helping those business owners gain their confidence. And that's one thing I've learned with a lot of my clients being business owners that a lot of times they hear they should start a podcast, but they don't really know what that means, or it's like, what should I talk about? And I think it's so rewarding, at least for me to, and I'm sure for you, to walk those clients and walk those business owners kind of through that step, whether it is you taking it off their plate so they don't have to deal with it, or giving helping them learn and helping them develop that confidence to
Yeah.
put themselves out there.
Yeah, I mean, it plays into anything you do, whether you're on a camera or not. But if you have a business, or even if you don't, you're showing up a completely different way if you have that, that self confidence or you don't. And it's something we all can develop. It's just something we have to work on. If it's not a place that we're at currently.
I couldn't agree more. So tell me a little bit more about the business side of what you're doing.
Sure. So I do two main things right now. It's called UGC, which is user generated content creation for anyone who's not familiar. And the other side of my work is brand spokesperson work. So pretty much it's two different types of on camera video content. One is from the perspective of like a client or customer. So, for example, a lot of the advertisements we see are like a business advertising their phone. They're saying what's great about it, why they created it, blah, blah, blah. Well, the other side of it is what I do, and that's the user generated content. So that would be me from the perspective of the client or customer talking about why I love this phone that I bought. And then businesses hire creators to do that and they run ads or they use it for organic content. And it works really well because if you think about it, anything we buy, we're looking at reviews. We want to hear what our peers are thinking about. So when someone that we can relate to is in an ad or an organic content talking about a product or service, it's much more effective than most of the time than when the business is talking about it. Or it's a great just additional addition to your marketing campaign or plan. The other side of what I do is brand spokesperson work. So that is kind of the other side of it. If a company wants a video or content, but they don't want to appear in it, or they don't have a team member to appear in it, they can hire me. So I'm representing the brand for that work, but I'm replacing, either the owner or a marketing person who either doesn't want to appear on camera or doesn't have the bandwidth. So that's the majority of my work right now. And then I still do a little bit of coaching. I spent years doing one on one coaching, and I'm working on moving out of that and creating more digital products. So, ebooks and courses and guides and things like that to still help people, but in a little bit of a different way.
No, Elena, that makes a ton of sense because I think it's so important because great, of course, the one-on-one coaching is incredible, but I really feel like you can reach more people and also not burn yourself out. I've been learning over the last few years of being in business, uh, moving away from the one-on-one and doing those products that you can offer to help a wider variety of people.
Yeah. And I have a hard time like sitting still for long periods of time. So being on calls all day long, I realized because I worked for a company for several years where I would have like 30, 40 clients at a time. Some days I would be on calls from the start of my day to the end. And I mean, by the end of the day, my body was like, I felt like I was like jumping out of my skin. So I've kind of learned that about myself over the years that I really like to be a little bit more active, changing my locations, which is hard to do when you're on Zoom calls all day long too. So,
I couldn't agree more. You
yeah.
mentioned learning a little bit more about yourself. How has what you've been doing continued to help you grow and learn more about yourself?
Oh, I think in all ways. I started really diving into the content creation in 2024, and it was a total new world for me doing it as a business. So before I was doing it as, okay, I need to grow my coaching business. I know I need to put content out to bring people into my world. But then when it became a revenue generator, I really had no idea what I was doing. So I had to learn from other people constantly. I had to, learn about how I work in that capacity versus how I was working before, what I was good at, what I really wasn't so good at. For example, I love recording and creating. I can't stand the editing or the administrative side of it. I put it off so that I don't do it and then it's something I need to do 2 weeks ago. So I've had to learn a lot of those things about myself. And of course, it's an ongoing process. But I think whenever you're doing something new, and you stick with it, you're consistent, you're committed to it, you realize that you're able to do it, that you're capable, and it just kind of reinforces that confidence that we were talking about before. But I think anything new that we're doing is a huge growth opportunity.
I couldn't agree more, and it's kind of as you mentioned, that reinforcing that confidence. I'm on episode 155 of this podcast, and
Mhm.
of course, I know I've come a long way, and I almost afraid to look at those first few episodes.
Yeah.
But it is fun to know how much you grow as a person, as a professional. As you mentioned, whether you like moving around a bit, so maybe those long day conference the long day
Yeah.
conference calls are a little tougher. Or I know for my example is I only love doing so many episodes in a day before it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I feel like we're crawling out of, you're crawling out of your skin at the end of the day. But it's fun to learn more about yourself, while also at this point generating revenue as well.
Yeah, and a lot of times we are afraid to start because we're like, well, I have to figure it all out. I have to figure out how many calls do I do in a day, and what if I get tired? And it's like you're never going to know any of those things unless you just do it. That's the way you learn. That's the way I learned. I mean, literally, I just joined a new program for content creation to like learn additional ways to bring in clients because I had been doing it. Like I said, I just figured it out. I threw things out there, saw it worked, and this year I was like, I really want to double my revenue. So I joined a couple programs to learn, and when I looked back on what I had created initially, like the beginning of last year, I was borderline horrified. I mean, I was like, whoa, what was I doing? But, people were happy with that work. And I had to learn along the way what worked, what didn't, what maybe I shouldn't have been doing that I'm doing totally different now. But I wouldn't have learned that if I wouldn't have tried and just put myself out there and gone through the process. So,
I think so much of that can be said about being as you're sharing your story, being authentic about sharing that story. Because I think so many people think everyone has it figured out, and we all know none of us have it figured
none
out
of us.
99% of the
Yeah.
time. But that 1% we have is usually what we started with, and so it becomes kind of our. Sometimes it's our crutch, sometimes it's our helping hand, depending on how much we use that. But I think there's one thing to be said of continuing to learn because I know the way I do it or the way you do it is never the best way, and
Right.
I think there's multiple ways because maybe you don't use everything from that coaching program, but even if you're taking a little bit of that piece, it can help get you to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't, I don't usually, I usually will try all the things that are recommended to me, especially when you're investing in a program. I think that's important. But 100, almost all of the time, a lot of it doesn't work for me in the way I want it to, or I have to modify it a little bit. And that's how it's supposed to be. That person is sharing their journey, what worked for them. And our job is to take it, try it, modify it, keep what works, and, leave what doesn't. And I think that also helps keep us from getting overwhelmed too. Because when you try to do all the things, usually aren't able to do much of anything. So you kind of have to know where to focus your attention and energy.
So, on your journey in the content creation space or the business space, you make a decision not really knowing the outcome. Can you give me a time where you just went for it?
Yeah, so two times come to mind. One was a few years ago when I was working for that company full time doing business coaching. I kind of mentioned it before. And I had started with them knowing that some of their values weren't like 100% aligned with mine. However, I really appreciated many other things about the company. So when I went in, I was at a phase in my life where I had a child, I was married, I was working to live versus living to work. Everybody at the company, most people were kind of in a different phase of life. Most of them were 5 to 10 years younger than me. They were really like all in all the time on this company. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to work for them. I'm going to do an awesome job, but I'm not going to compromise my values and how I want to work. And I did that for 3 years, and it was great. I learned so much. It was an awesome opportunity. But at the end of that time, I kind of was just getting to the point where I'm like, I'm not going to be here much longer. Like, I just know it's not a fit, and I'm feeling it more and more every day. And at one point, and I was doing a little coaching on the side, but not much. I wasn't doing much of very little content creation at this point. And one day they did something that's called a culture call, where we have team meetings every month, and like a couple times a year, they would say to the team, if they would share their goals for the quarter or year, and they would say, if you're not on board, it's totally okay, but please don't stay. And they actually pay you for 2 months, I think it was, your salary, and then you leave. So I was sitting in that meeting, and I just kind of had again that knowing where I was like, this is it. I'm done. I really didn't have a plan. I truly did not have a plan, but I knew that eventually I could figure it out. I had a business before, and I'm like, I know I can figure this out and figure out what I want to do and make this work. And I literally just put my notice in and I left that day. It was all done in a very, respectful way. It wasn't like I, left on bad terms or anything, but it was a very like somewhat split second decision. But it was just, I knew that it was time to go. And to answer your question, I really had no idea what I was going to do. Like the next day when I was home instead of in the office, I'm like, all right, what are we doing? What do we do today? So yeah, that was a big one. And the second one was after I left that company, I was trying to build my coaching business back up. And I got to a point where I realized that I didn't want to do the one-on-one anymore. And that's when I kind of pivoted into the content creation. Again, like we talked about before, I had no clue what I was really doing. I basically was like, I can make a portfolio and I can put it out there and I think I can bring in clients, but it was really just figuring it out as I went every single day.
It's impressive, and it's so funny because I know that split second decision feeling. It's like right in your stomach, and it just
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it to other people that it's the right decision. It's not even like it feels right. I just know it's right. I don't know how it's gonna be right, but we're gonna make it right. I think sometimes that's the
Mhm.
caveat.
Yeah, you have to be committed to it. You have to believe that, like you said, it's the right time, it's the right decision, and then you have to go for it and really focus on not doubting yourself. Because if I would have left and sat there and regret and focused on, what I could have done, should have done, all the things, I wouldn't have been focusing on what do I want to build next.
I think I couldn't agree more, and I think one of the biggest things is the biggest critic for a lot of us is that person right between our ears.
Yeah,
They're the ones that are often talking the most or judging the most, and it's great to have, and at least for me, it's great to have a community around me that support
yeah,
me. That I have my friend Tamika. She's one of my close business partners as well. I call her every once in a while, not often, but hey, I'm spiraling today,
yeah,
and so she'll give me a call and like talk me off the metaphoric cliff, if you will, and just oh hey, I'm actually okay. Let me take a couple breaths. Let me realize I am doing a good job, and just kind of having that support system, I think, is so crucial. Even though a lot of times you're doing the battling on your own, I feel like you're never truly alone.
yeah, absolutely. And like you said, that just having some type of support community. And the cool thing about right now, a lot of people say, well, I don't have anyone. Facebook groups are a free, amazing way to find that. There are so many. I mean, I can't even tell you how many Facebook groups I am in. So many with entrepreneurs, with other people in marketing, with female entrepreneur groups. And every single day, people are in there asking questions, supporting each other. And it's a lot of it is free. You can find these anywhere on social media platforms. You just have to look for them. And then you also have to make sure they're aligned with what you are doing and where you want to go. Because there's also many groups where people will bring you down if you aren't careful. So, but it is amazing the opportunities we have with it right now. And I love in person as well. I do a mix between the two.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, out of curiosity, what is one piece of advice you'd give to yourself, your younger self?
Oh my gosh. That's so funny because this is actually the second time I've been asked that question today, which is crazy. So I don't know if it's a specific piece of advice, but something that I learned along the process when I was going through the therapy and the coaching that I had no clue before that was just how much power and control we have over our lives, regardless of what's going on around us. Up until the point where I went through that experience I had and that pushed me into therapy and coaching, I thought that somebody does something, somebody says something to me, I lose a job, my boyfriend breaks up with me, that it was just going to ruin my day, ruin my week, and now my life is just over for a while. I didn't realize that I actually had a choice in how I let that impact me and for how long. And that for me was such a pivotal, just eye opening experience. I've had several that, I talk about a lot, but that was a big one, is just how much we can take a step back once we develop that skill and evaluate, wait, how long do I want to think about this? And how do I want to think about it? And what is that creating in my life? And I think if I could go back and teach myself that when I was younger, I do think it's important, like what age I would learn that, because a certain age would be like reject it, not be interested, and be like, you're crazy. Because I have a 10-year-old right now and I try to teach this stuff to her. And I can tell it's like a little too young. She grasps some of it, but other stuff she's like, okay, mom. But I do think preteen, teenager, absolutely life changing, just knowledge to have. And the other piece of it is just to really expand your environment to see what other people are doing, because many times we grow up, we see our parents, we see our family, and we think those are the only opportunities available to us. Another thing that for many years it's like, oh, get a job, you go to school, you have a kid, you get married, and you think that's just the life that I need to live. And then as I got older and I started social media, watching podcasts, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube, successful entrepreneurs, I was like, oh my gosh, why did nobody tell me I could make a full-time living creating content? that was just, and I know it's a different world now. Kids are taught that early on because it's a very common thing. But back when I was growing up, it wasn't. And I thought, had to go get a job as a marketing director and that was it. Not that that's a bad thing, but it was not for me. So I think those two things is just opening your eyes to all the opportunities out there because truly they're limitless.
I really appreciate you said one of the aspects is developing that skill of not criticizing self or anything like that. And I think the other thing you mentioned was that just knowing that there's so many different things out there. And I think a lot of times our family and our immediate people, they care about us. And they often, I realize, looking back, they know what they know. And so
Mhm. Yeah.
us becoming podcasters and content creators, it's nothing they've even thought of or dreamed of or maybe seen on TV once, or
Mhm.
it's that nightly news special that podcaster makes it big or anything like that. But I think, again, you mentioned, surrounding yourself or expanding that horizon to see what else is out there, but also to see yourself in those kind of positions. I think is powerful as
Yes.
well.
And just the fact that you can be in that position, even if you haven't seen someone look like you or in your family be in that position. And I think the third thing I'd add, sorry, just one more quick thing, is
Absolutely.
also something I struggled with as I was growing up is not embracing like me who I was, how I functioned, how I looked, like thinking that that was a problem because you don't. And I know it's a our brain is naturally driven to go there, but thinking it's a problem that I was different, that I functioned differently, that I, didn't learn the same way and also the way I looked. And now I'm so glad. But I think I wish someone would have kind of taught or explained that to me in a little bit of a different way so I understood that when you embrace how your unique qualities, your experience, your background, that is how you are the most successful truly. Like if we look at social media again, like YouTube, podcasts, the people who are out there being their own quirky selves, they are the ones who have the 8 million subscribers, and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month because they're being themselves. So I think that is the other thing.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think your authentic self is your superpower, and if we could figure that out, or we taught that earlier, I think I think it saves you a lot of time, but also, I think a lot of the growing pains, and I guess maybe that's something we need. But I mean, I look back, and it's always that kind of idea of what would you say to your like 14-year-old self, or how would they feel about what you've done now? And I think
Yeah.
for me at least, mine would be pretty excited about
Yeah.
what's unfolded so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think I'd be like, wow, I never thought this was an option. And it is. So,
So, title of the podcast: Into the Unknown. What are you working on now, and how can people find out more about what you do?
yeah. So, right now, one of the projects I'm working on is creating a UGC roadmap. So, I talked about before, a lot of what I do is the user generated content creation. And what I see in the field is a lot of people wanting to get into it, but they just don't know like how to go from step 1 to 10. There's a lot of programs out there, but they don't all have a very clear framework like what do I do first, second, third, fourth and fifth. And I'm in several programs and I see that question asked a lot, and that is exactly what I had created for myself when I got started. I literally wrote it out on a piece of paper. I was like, these are the first 5 things I'm going to do, and that is how I created the business I have today. So it's going to be a very low ticket offer to help people who are just beginning. It's a roadmap that you can buy. It gives you the 10 steps in detail. So you can literally get up and running and be making money within a couple of weeks if you do all the steps. So that's something I'm working on right now. And if anyone is interested in following me, I'm merging it all under my coaching page right now. So I don't have a whole lot of um, talk about content creation on there yet, except me creating stuff, but it's at Elena Nicole Health. And that is where I'll be talking more about this UGC roadmap that I'm creating as well, and where you can find it.
Well, I want to say I really appreciate you taking time to talk with me,
Yeah,
and I really love the idea of a roadmap because I think there's so many steps that. And I'm sure, as you mentioned, yes, I wrote a ton down, but also, you look back and like, oh, I should have done this step number 3
yeah,
instead of step 47. When
a hundred
someone
percent.
was like, oh yeah, I should have done that, or I'm watching, someone else or something. Oh, that would
Yeah,
have saved me 10 hours or 10 years of my life sometimes.
100% things I'm learning, I'm always adding into it. Like when I started and started to make good money with it, I started a little notes doc on my phone and on my computer. And every time I learn something, I'm just adding it in there because I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about this for the first 6 months. This is so important. And I'm just adding it in there. So, yes, it'll include all of that for people who are just getting started, but not in an overwhelming way because I know that there's that fine line between providing the information and like really overwhelming. So I'm going to really work to make it simple, concise, and just helpful.
Well, I want to say thank you again for taking the time to talk with me. I really enjoyed our conversation
Me
today.
too.
We'll
Yeah,
talk
thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
we'll talk soon.
Yep. Bye.
Another fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.